Yuri, our first one, actually the pregnancy itself was quite normal. It was his delivery that was an issue. About 26 hours in labor, his heart rate and his oxygenation began to decline, and they figured out that he had a cord wrapped around his throat and I would need emergency C-section.
By the grace of God, she works in the medical field, and she woke up and she started reading her charts, and she called the doctor and she said, my baby's struggling to breathe. You need to take me into surgery. And had it not been for God, putting her in a place where she could, interpret what was going on, and and she was delirious. She woke up and just in this instant, she's like, take me in. She just jumped right into the C-section, and within 45 minutes, she was back there, and I was holding our baby boy.
Yep.
Our second son, Lim, on the other hand, his ordeal was from the beginning. And so they said, you are pregnant, but it looks like you have Siamese twins that are joined at the head, and one of them didn't make it. And we're concerned that the one that didn't make it is going to create a toxic situation from the one that did make it. And so we said, okay, we'll wait and we'll figure this out. And then we went back and they said that it's not a Siamese twin. Your baby's actually leaning against a tumor. And so now we're concerned that the tumor is going to basically take all the nutrients away from the baby and potentially kill the baby. So we prayed and we waited and we went back. And then they told us that the tumor's under control, it's not growing, the baby's growing, but all of his organs are outside of his body.
And so I prayed, and I remember one trip particularly, me just screaming in the car, begging God to give me this baby, to let this baby be okay. And as quiet as a whisper, I heard, baby will be okay. Baby will be okay. And then the weeks following, we got the ultrasound that was absolutely normal, nothing wrong. And I knew that was all God. And now we have Emery, who just topped it off. Came in with a bang. So when she was born, she had pulmonary atresia with VSD. Basically, the pulmonary artery was not sufficient for oxygenating her lungs and the rest of her body. Was not detected from the previous ultrasounds that we had. And so when she was born, immediately, I believe Lars mentioned to the nurses, like, is she a little blue? Even though she didn't look like she was in any distress at all, I was able to just see her briefly.
And so they rushed Emery over to DMC Children's, and now I'm in a spot where I got to figure out, I have a wife, that's at one hospital, and then a baby that's at another hospital. And Mo's surgery was a little rougher this time than we expected, and so we were trying to, navigate through that. And we had excellent doctors in both hospitals, but things come up, and so trying to figure out, what's the best route for things. And fortunately, God put us in a place where we joined a great church. And so I was able to call Pastor Darren and say, hey, you mind keeping the boys for just a few hours? It went from her having a congenital heart defect to her needing surgery within 72 hours. And I think the toughest part of it all was me not really understanding what the doctors were saying, and me trying to figure out and understand everything that was going on, because I knew that my wife, she practices medicine, she would know what's going on. And so I'm trying to figure out, all right, what's going on so I can best explain it to her. And that Saturday, I had argued with Mo, not argued, but I was really adamant about her staying in the hospital and just healing up before, she came to Children's. And I said, you really need to stay. And she's being a mama bear and she wants to see her baby. And I'm like, no, you just had surgery. You have to stay. And so she says, okay, I'll stay. And a few hours later, I'm driving back and I'm like, hey, we're gonna go ahead and get you checked out of the hospital so you can go down to Detroit to see the baby. And she's like, why? I thought, we were gonna stay till tomorrow. They're on their way. I said, I think we probably need to go, because they had a conversation about palliative care. And I'd never heard that term before. And so that was basically them saying that we're pretty certain you may have to take your baby home to die. And
it was rough. It was the biggest blindside of them all, that we were she wasn't gonna make it, and I was not gonna be able to hold my baby girl while she was alive. And in a sense, I felt it was hopeless, but in another way, I knew that God was the only way. Like man had already given up. The doctors had already said, we've done everything. They were just throwing stuff at her. Like, this is the last call. Yeah. This is the last thing we can do. They had already said this is probably going to happen. Everything they have tried had failed, and she was not responding at all. And I knew the only way we were getting out of that situation, the only way we were going to get our baby girl back was God. That was the only way. That was the only option that we had. So we prayed and we begged and we screamed and we begged some more to get our baby girl back. I was standing over her bed and again, just praying to God. The nurses were praying, the doctors were praying, everybody was praying for her. And she had this rash on her, but no one really knew what it was. It was a transit rash. It would come and go. Lars and some of the other doctors felt like it was related to her oxygenation. But the rash at its most visible point was like a reddish color. And over her heart, actually her heart's in the middle of her chest, not on the left side like ours, but there was an actual heart that I took a picture of. And with Lim, I felt like God was saying to me, baby will be all right. But with her, it was an actual heart on her chest. And I felt, again, like God was saying, it's going to be okay.
You know, I just had to believe in God, you know. And I kept telling Mo that God's going to take care of our baby. She's going to be all right. He's going to do what he does best. And so by the time we get from her hospital to the hospital in Detroit, they stabilized her. And, you know, we get up there and they say she's stable now. Her oxygen levels are climbing. We're going to do a catheterization procedure tomorrow. And from there, we're going to go to surgery. Within 72 hours, she was turning the corner. And so we went from them telling us that she would be in the hospital up to a year to them sending her home in 3.5 weeks. She's exceeding all expectations. The next step is a surgery somewhere around 6 months. So she has another open heart surgery.
There was no way this could have been done without God. God was threaded through every aspect of her being born.
I think our community group and just how they wrapped their arms around us was a big part of it. And, you know, we didn't expect this. We didn't go to community group looking for that, but it was there. Because we've been praying with these folks and studying with these folks, and they were ready and willing to wrap their arms around. Because God put it on our heart to serve in the church, we were able to meet other folks that cared and loved us. I mean, just so many other folks, not enough that I can name.
So many.
And so whereas putting your faith in God is important, pouring your heart back into the church and serving and making those connections, and that's just a big part of hope, you know, because you can borrow from the hope of others because you have all these other folks that have hope for you. And I think that's been the biggest thing for us, and we've never expected to need people. You know, we've always tried to help. We've always tried to share our joy and our treasure and our love with other people, and we never expected to be in this spot. And just following God's word and being faithful put us in a position where we could really have hope and have authentic hope and know that, you know, he would provide.